Well, hello there and good day. Thank you for joining me. I am Frost PDP, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Crusader Kings 2 and discuss a suggestion, really, which is broken down, very simple, is that there should be a greater incidence in siege and movement characters for combat purposes and obviously sieging purposes. So I just closed the guy out, but let's bring him back up. We're going to go look at Rodar the Hunter, or however you say that, because I'm not Norse. Um, He's got the trait Hunter, which, as it stands, gives you +2 martial, +1 diplomacy. That +20% pursuit involves the pursuit phase of combat. I guess you do 20% more damage. And fellow hunters are +10. Now that's cool. But when I think about it, right, when you think about a hunter, when you think about any kind of guy who sneaks through the woods, you immediately get the impression that he's particularly good at it. Meaning, not only does he track prey, but he's able to sort of keep his life together enough to lead troops, lead people around, or at least lead himself around. Which got me to thinking how there's the organizer trait, and I'll flip to someone with that in a minute, but the base argument I'm making here is add some lesser number to hunter. So let's look at an organizer. Let's look at men for organizers. The organizer trait is plus movement speed +20%, retreat +10%. So that retreat +10% is useful in combat if you ever lose. It gets you out of combat. I wouldn't mind seeing that buffed, by the way, just a thought, but I'm sure that's also relative to the character's martial score, right? I mean, that's really how you measure these things. Yeah, it tells you the percent modifier, but it doesn't give you their actual effects. So when you look at him, all right, instead of just saying organizer +20% movement speed, you see organizer movement speed 43%, +20% organizer times 2.15 martial, right? So whatever the martial number works out to, and I'm not going to go into all the math because I frankly don't know it. But like pursuit is really good. You can see how that plays out. You can see it differently on him. He's got less pursuit. He's got moral defense because he's brave. But this guy's, he's no coward either. This guy's a real beast, actually. There's no joke about him. And my point is that if you are a hunter, you should get maybe not +20 movement speed, maybe not even +10% movement speed. Maybe just +5% movement speed, Character's familiar with trails. He knows how to reach out and network with other hunters and find out the good trails to move people through and where, you don't have to watch for it. Hunters will ambush animals, right? And if you're fighting against local peoples, let's say, they may have a bunch of their hunters decide to try to shoot you if you're invading their territory. And that means as an army, you have to sweep and patrol the area on a broader spectrum, essentially, right? You have to spend more attention. If this guy can network with the hunters and knows how to look for hunters' potential ambush points, that would increase his army's movement speed because he'd be more effective at spotting things, which is a good argument for movement speed +20. I did say I wanted to talk about siege real quick. And I also want to add, it would be, I can't show you obviously because I don't have any in my empire pretty much, but administrator, oh good, administrator is a trait which does give movement speed +10. So it's similar to hunter, but it gives you movement speed +10 instead of organizers +20. The problem is, and I'm going to make the argument that this trait as well as architect should appear far more often, is because one, this is a lesser bonus, but two, it's not tied to combat. So it's not tied to your martial education, let me put it that way. So and Midas Touched or Fortune Builder can get administrator. So could a priest probably. Someone who studies learning could certainly study administration. Business administration degrees, hello. My thought is, if this gives you movement speed, this should be a more frequent thing, considering it often appears on characters who have very little martial. This guy's incredible, actually. Wow. Flat terrain, winter soldier, an administrator, like no problems with movement and supply, right? So he's a rare exception where a dude will actually have a high military score with administrator, but you can see how like you get a few in the world, the whole world, keep in mind, Whereas organizer, I mean, it's much more present. And it's certainly much more present among much higher combat characters. I'm not sure why this isn't organizing it correctly, because clearly 21, 11, 10, 19 doesn't make sense. But yeah, so the incidence of not only organizer, but administrator. Well, not organizer. I think organizer is prevalent enough. If you have one, you've got a really good advantage. But administrators should pop up more often. And with administrators comes architect. If I can spell it. Architect gives you +1 martial, +2 stewardship, +20% siege. That is, of course, multiplied by martial influence. Siege leader, on the other hand, gets +40% siege. I think there should be more architects, because it's very rare to find the siege leader, but like your empire has, most empires of decent size have at least a few good architects in them. This should be more prevalent. That's my argument here. And should Hunter have anything to do with that? No. Hunter might have +5 movement, but certainly not, anything related to siege. In fact, is there another trait I could think that might be good? Well, Game Master. Could I find myself one? Sure I could. Let's do that. Game Master. I know it's supposed to be like narrow flank is the military bonus here, but +10% siege, because you know how people think. You can set up ruses like, I don't know, the Mongolians used to do when they would put like corpses on horses and ride them around to make it look like they had more people, which, like, come on. Game masters would study these kind of diversionary tactics, which would maybe coerce somebody's castle guards into letting down the wall quicker. They might be able to send in messages, or maybe a diplomacy, maybe something related to diplomat. I don't know. But I think that these traits should be a little more prevalent. That's all I'm saying. You may disagree with me, you may think it makes things overpowered, but the truth is, how many hunters do you have in a realm? I mean, I have a globe-spanning empire. That is for sure. Do you know how many hunters I have? This many. And how many of them are any good at combat? Well, I would tell you if it organizes properly, but 1. If you count these 10s, they're competent. I don't consider that competent. But sure, I have 1 really good combat person with Hunter. I could see maybe having it have another benefit. That's just my thoughts. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that. I want to thank you all for joining me, and as always on this channel, La Paz.